Hello gamers, Powered Heal here, and welcome to the Classic Plus Corner. This is a segment of the channel where we discuss all things related to WoW Classic Plus. This will be episode 24, and we'll be talking about the Great Vault. And specifically, should we bring the Great Vault over from retail into WoW Classic, specifically for Classic Plus? I don't think they would make such a big change for Era, but yeah, I had some thoughts on how we could bring this into Classic Plus. So first I'll explain what it is for the people that don't really play retail, and then I'll talk about why I think it could be a good addition to the game and how we might have to change it, because I think that it would definitely have to be changed a little bit when compared to retail. It's maybe too powerful in retail, especially for a game like Classic. So to get right into it, what is the Great Vault, right? And there's been many iterations of the Great Vault over different expansions. It's a concept. I don't know exactly when it got started, but basically some expansion got started and it kept being a thing the entire way through. And basically it's like a weekly sort of loot reset that you get from like a single piece of loot, I believe, from a chest. Or you can think of it as like a chest. It's really more like a bank. It's like a vault, basically. You go to a vault in the main city and you go there once a week and you get a piece of loot, and that's it. But there's a lot more to it than that in the sense of how that piece of loot is actually determined. So in retail, what it is you have different sort of categories. You have rating, I believe, Mythic Plus, and then PvP. And basically the more you do in each of those categories, the more options you unlock. So for example, the higher level key you do in Mythic Plus, or the higher difficulty of raid you do, that then unlocks a higher item level item to be obtained from the vault. And I believe the bosses play a factor there too. So for example, like in order to get a piece of loot from a certain boss, you may have to have done that boss or something like that, I think is what it is. In previous versions, I know you didn't have to. There's been versions where you could actually get like a trinket from the last boss on Mythic without having to do that. I think that people kind of didn't really love that idea. So they kind of they went back on that at some point. And I believe now you have to take out the boss in order to have to have killed it at least once, basically, in order to be eligible from loot from that boss. And basically, the higher you progress things, the better loot you get, up to a cap. So the cap is pretty much like the normal Mythic items, is how I would put it. So for Mythic Plus, what this used to come down to is you would do like a 10. And for a lot of players, Mythic Plus would be kind of the way they access the system, because it would be the way that they get an item that's kind of equivalent item level to Mythic. Because for people who didn't do the Mythic rating, they obviously wouldn't have progressed that part of the track high enough to get a Mythic item to drop from the Great Vault. So that means they would have to do dungeons Mythic Plus, and they would do like 110 a week is the thought. They may have changed this what the actual number of the key is, but basically there's a max that you could do for the week, and it gives you like the max eye level item. And then the more of these you do, right, you end up with more choices. So if you do like maybe 3 10s, let's say, in a week, then you might have like 3 choices from your vault instead of just one item. All right. Or if you progress really deep into the raid, you might get 3 mythic items from the vault instead of 1. You don't get all 3, but you get to pick between them. So that's kind of like the idea. And Blizzard, they added all these like extra items popping in where you can choose, because they want to make it so that you don't get redundant items, right? Because retail is very much about loot accessibility, and they don't want, this is supposed to be a big thing every week. It's supposed to be a really exciting thing, a really fun thing, and they don't want that excitement to be a complete letdown, right? So they added like all these things where you can progress them further and you get more chances. And the idea is if you fill out your vault completely, you think you can have like 9 items that are mythic or something between all the different game modes that you get to pick from, right? So you have a lot of choice, a lot of flexibility, and you'll see that actually because when they do Race for World First, sometimes actually they'll open their vault, see what they get, but before they actually pick something, they'll kind of run the raid or something like that, and then they'll fill in what they don't have with the vault in some cases. So yeah, it's a pretty cool concept. And why do I think this should go into Classic Plus, right? And it seems a little bit at odds with what I was just talking about last video with loot scarcity. And I think that there is a balance there between having a system like this and loot scarcity. and I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail in a second, but I want to talk about like the positives of this system first and why I think it's actually really cool. I think it adds sort of like an almost ritualistic aspect of the game, which we've kind of been missing out on for a little bit, where it kind of gets everybody together at a certain time. Obviously, you don't have to open your vault in the morning, but typically what it would be is, the server would reset on Tuesday, and if you had any chance of being online, I remember we were in class, like we were in school, we would always be there for that morning when the vault opens. Everybody was so excited, and they log on, they see what item they got, they're comparing items, they're like linking stuff in chat. There's a bunch of people in the main city at that hub where the vault is. I actually like the fact too that you, I think if they do it in Classic, I don't know if they've changed this in retail, but I like the fact that you have to travel to the city to open the vault. I don't think you should be able to open it from like a menu or something like that. I think, it's just cool to have everybody there, right? So I think that's just a really cool, like a ritualistic aspect, that we're missing, and it's really fun for people to, just kind of be able to compare drops. It's almost like a group activity in a way that's kind of a bit organic and just fun and not forced or anything like that, like some like weird jank world boss that is like a participation trophy or something like that. You actually had to do stuff to get the items in this vault. Now you're getting rewarded for it, and everybody gets to see what they get. It's like Christmas in WoW, basically. Christmas every week, right? And I think it's really cool. And I think it also helps in a game with loot scarcity to have some aspects of kind of like guaranteed or concrete loot. And this is definitely good at providing that, right? Now you can do other things. You can have reputation vendors, right? They have that already in Classic WoW, so you can get some items from reputation. But I think having, like an item that you get once per week is actually not a super bad thing. And it's kind of like a nice bridge, right, between the super hard loot scarcity of Classic and the loot accessibility, loot pinata that is retail WoW currently. Now, how would I change it to make it more compatible with Classic? And this is where I think that you have to be really careful, because you do want to keep that loot scarcity aspect in the game. And I think having too many options like they do in retail, like being able to get too many things from the vault, is probably not a great idea. Because I think it's okay in this case if you actually have items that maybe aren't useful for you sometimes. So the item level, I think, should always be relatively in line with what you're progressing through. So for example, like if you were doing Molten Core, you would get a Molten Core equivalent item, right? If you were doing Blackwing Lair, you get a Blackwing Lair equivalent item in terms of eye level. So I think that's fine. But in terms of what it is, and can you get duplicates and stuff like that, and how many choices you actually get, I think they should drastically reduce the choices. I would say maybe to 3, honestly. Maybe even less than that. I would actually be okay if you could only get, if it was literally like 1 random item a week. But I could see like giving a choice of, 1 of 2 or 1 of 3. But I think being able to fill out your vault to like a 1 of 9 is a little bit too much. And even though you are doing the work, you're kind of going in and, you're doing those extra things to fill out those vault slots, I think it's just a bit too much utility you're giving the player in a Classic WoW system where a loot scarcity is kind of supposed to be a thing, right? This should really feel like a bonus more than anything, kind of like a slot machine sort of gamba that you put a little bit of effort into obtaining, right? But the outcome is not deterministic. It's not guaranteed. And I think that getting away from like super deterministic outcomes is something that I like in WoW Classic. It keeps kind of like the fun there. Again, like I mentioned in the last video, as long as the items are not, completely game defining, then I'm okay with them being quite rare and there being a bit of like RNG involved in getting them, right? So yeah, I wouldn't have the Great Vault be anything like super deterministic. I wouldn't even have it, like, again, have a crazy amount of options where it sort of feels like pseudo-deterministic, even though it's really not, right? Because, like, it's like, yeah, technically I couldn't, like, define the piece that I wanted, but, I got 9 options, and I was pretty much guaranteed to get a boot here, or guaranteed to get a glove, or something like that. So, I think we should definitely rein back the number of things that can appear in the vault. But other than that, I think it would be actually a really fun system. And it would give kind of the more casual players a way to kind of like acquire gear too as well, right? And it just helps kind of fix or like fill in rather for some of those slots that you're not going to have during raiding. and stuff like that. So yeah, I just think something like the Great Vault could be interesting in Classic Plus. I think the reality is we're just not going to have the same level of loot scarcity regardless. And I think it's going to be a matter of how they do it. So we could end up with something like the badge system that people were talking about, for TBC, where you can buy all the items and badges. I think that's kind of like just a terrible idea. I think we're losing so much of the identity of Classic. I've already made 2 videos on that. So please refer to those if you want a more detailed explanation. But I think this could be a way to sort of bridge that gap where, there's still an excitement, a chance aspect element to it. You're not just guaranteed to get everything that you want all the time, right? But it does give you a little bit more loot than normal, gives you a fun activity to do with your friends at the start of the week. You're all comparing what you get from your vault, and you have the winners and the losers and people that are so excited and happy, and people are lamenting. I think that the lamentation is part of the fun in some ways, right? Because knowing that you could have gotten like an item that isn't really that useful, and you did get a really good item instead, that's part of the fun, right? If you know that basically the system is working in a way where it's going to try and replace pieces that you don't have. Essentially, if you don't have like a high eye level glove, you don't have a high level boot. If the system is doing some type of internal correction to try and give you items in those slots that you're missing, then you're just going to go to your vault and you're going to be like, oh, I know I'm going to get a cool piece this week, right? Kind of takes some of the fun out of it. So I think having the chance to be disappointed is perfectly okay. And the thing that I like about a system like this is that it doesn't necessarily make getting full BIS super easy at the end, right? Because it's more of a catch-up mechanic for players that can't play as much and stuff like that, because the lower amount of items you have from the, whatever the current raid difficulty is, the more likely it is that you're going to receive an upgrade from this vault, right? And then the more BIS you get, the harder it actually is to get an upgrade from the vault, right? So it's not like, if you're close to BIS, or if you're somebody who's in a guild where they just funnel you all the gear or something like that, you're just going to easily be able to polish off your BIS list, by using the vault. That's kind of not the point. It's kind of meant to be a safety net, like a catch-up mechanic for people that weren't as lucky, or maybe just didn't have a chance to do as much content, didn't play the game as much. And the intention is going to be that, the more geared out, the less useful this is going to be for you. But it still gives you that chance every week, which is still cool, right? So, it's not going to be like a good chance that you're going to be able to get your final piece, but there is an additional chance than you would have had before, right? Which is always cool, and I don't think people can really complain about that. I think it also would encourage a little bit more of loot, like diversity, or I would say like, would encourage the player base to spread the loot out more within their own guilds. Obviously, in pugging situations, nothing can be really done about that. But if you have a guild environment that's like loot council, and it seems like you guys are going to stay together for a reasonably long amount of time, then I would say that the council is going to be more incentivized to spread the loot out, because if you give somebody, just everything they want right away, then they're probably going to be losing a lot of value on their vault, right? And that value is essentially felt throughout the raid. So if you have a raid of, let's just say they do 40 again, I don't think that they will, but let's say you have a raid of 40 people, and you give all the loot to like, your 10 best friends or something like that. And that's going to be really great for the first couple weeks. And then all of a sudden, they're going to be wasting vault pieces left and right? And it's just going to really hurt the guild as a whole, because those 10 players are now basically replacing gear that they already have. They're replacing raid pieces with raid pieces, just picking between which one's the best raid pieces when you have other people that don't even have raid pieces. So it would be much better for the guild as a whole if you really do equally distribute the loot, and then more people have a chance to make use of their vault. And I think it just provides a great incentive that way as well. So let me know what you think. Again, I think as long as you keep the RNG aspect high enough, where this isn't like a guaranteed, like, oh, you're getting your best item or something like that from this vault. It's something that could be worked in, and it could actually be quite fun. I have a lot of fond memories from retail of opening the vault with friends. Like, we'd all get in Discord with each other and just kind of laugh like, oh, this guy got screwed or this guy got a really good item and stuff like that. And like I said, even when you're losing, it's kind of fun in a way because everybody's like making fun of you and like, oh, like nice RNG nerd, stuff like that, right? So, it maybe doesn't feel great in that moment. And then it creates these stories, right? Like we have so many stories where it's like my friend Clyde got like all the gear in one expansion, and nobody else got like any gear from their vault. Like he just kept hitting and hitting and hitting. He's like, oh, this guy is gaming the system. His dad works for Blizzard. Just creates like the memes and the fun, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious to hear if you guys would like to see the vault added in WoW Classic Plus. I'm curious how they would do it for like certain things. That's another thing, the implementation. I mean, I think the rating stuff is pretty straightforward, but the dungeons, I hope we kind of don't get heroic dungeons, but you could even do a piece where maybe you get 2 items, but they're not raid items, right? So 1 item comes from the raid, so it's like a normal vault thing, and then you also get like a heroic item. And maybe if you want, you could do something where you can target the item a little bit for the heroic item, okay? And maybe even after tiers go by or something like that, to kind of dip into that TBC idea, instead of just being able to buy the item outright with badges. Maybe what happens is you can kind of weight your vault a little bit for previous tier items. So that could be a thing as well. So maybe, you have a chance of getting items from previous tier in the vault if you want as well. Maybe there's a separate thing you can do, and you'd have to put in more effort to get these things if you wanted. But again, you have to be a little bit careful because we don't want to give people too many chores, right? But I think in this case, just playing the old raid would be good. So for example, like let's say you're in AQ40 but you still need Onslaught Girl from MC. Maybe you could have a thing where you go and you run if you run the MC and you full clear it, that gives you access now to be able to get a roll of the MC vault or whatever, right? And maybe like I said, after maybe after Blackwing Lair and you go into like AQ, so you're 2 tiers removed or something, you're now able to specialize what you're trying to pick up a little bit. So it's not guaranteed to give you an Onslaught Girdle, but maybe it has a higher chance of giving you quote-unquote rarer items, like Onslaught Girdle, Bone Reaver's Edge, something like that. So I could see things like that. I'm not against, helping out, round out some slots like that in some cases, but I just think, making the item just purely available for purchase is definitely a bridge too far, right? Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool ways you could do it, and it wouldn't be that hard to implement. I think it would be a lot of fun. It would give the casual player something to really look forward to. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you like videos like this, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.